Welcome to a new take on an old Polish perspective. Anyway, today we're going to take a look at fake news and everything that was in the news. We're going to go back to 2016, take a look at the election, and where did all this fake news come from? Where was it originally originated? Where did the concept of Trump working with Putin and Russia to influence the election come from? And we're gonna take a look at what's left on these news stories. Well, first off, we're gonna take a look at one really reliable website called Wikipedia to get the definition of fake news sites. Fake news sites deliberately publish hoaxes and disinformation to drive web traffic inflamed by social media. These sites are distinguished from news satire, which is usually intended to be humorous, as they mislead and sometimes profit from readers' gullibility. Well, most fake news sites are portrayed to be spin-offs of other news sites. Some of these websites are examples of website spoofing, structured to make visitors believe they are visiting major news websites like ABC News or MSNBC. The New York Times pointed out that within a strict definition, fake news on the internet referred to as fictitious article which was fabricated with the deliberate motivation to defraud readers, generally with the goal of profiteering through clickbait. Political Fact described fake news as fabricated content designed to fool readers and subsequently made viral through the internet to crowds that increase its dissemination. Anyway, if you look at Wiki, these fake news sites were pointed at gullible people that would believe anything. Well, I've looked at dozens of these back in 2016 and in 2020. And if you looked at the web address, you could see, a couple of letters were changed, or it would pop up. They would basically copy the coding off of ABC or whatever. They would take out what they didn't need, and then they would put in their article, oh, okay, it looked just like it. But if you look at the web address, boom, you could see instantly it was not ABC. It's just like any spam email. If something comes from a Gmail account, it's a spammer. And if you look at the address and you see, what do they call it? It's like American Express, scam that they send out. If they misspell America or call it American Express or something like that, everybody knows that it's just a scam. People knew the fake websites were fake. People knew the information on there was just humorous, but you got a lot of people that are trying to influence and trying to convince the American public that 99% of the people that voted for Trump were misled by fake news. Okay, let's take a look at one example. WTO5 News has since shut down its website. However, when it was operational, it openly admitted to fabricating content and even had a disclaimer on its homepage. Most articles on WTOE5News.com were satire for pure fantasy, ending. The Fed has taken down its version of the article, but is still publishing fake news and growing its audience on Facebook. It currently has over 350,000 followers. Well, if you look at, I don't look at Facebook, but if you look at Twitter, how many people have over 1 million followers? I mean, you look at Tucker Carlson, he goes on, he has over 1 million people viewing him live. So how much influence do these people actually have? We're gonna take a look at some statistics here. Okay, well, first of all, spent a couple hours trying to research this, looking for articles they had about a guy in Russia that made over $1 million. That's down. Another guy in Ukraine made close to $1 million. That's all gone. Basically, the internet has been censored to such a degree you can't even research this stuff. And realistically, if we really wanted to get to the truth, wouldn't we research even the fake stuff so that we could identify the fake websites, and it would be easier for them to warn people how to identify fake news sites? But no, they just decided to take them all off. Why? Well, we're going to dig into this and find out why. Okay, now here is what the news... Here's an example of the news that was pumped out. This is April 3rd, 2017. All Things Considered, which is BBC. And we know BBC is completely legitimate. They would never think about lying to you because they're funded by the federal government, so we know they are a reliable source. So the BBC reports how Russian Twitter bots pumped out fake news during the 2016 election. Well, where did they get this story from? Okay, we're going to take a look at where they got this story from and if it is true or if we just caught BBC in a lie. Okay, and it gets way beyond BBC. This is actually a testimony before Congress. Their testimony went beyond the January 6, 2017 Intelligence Committee report that concluded Russian President Vladimir Putin himself ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the U.S. presidential election. The 6 witnesses described Russia's tactics as a modern version of Cold War active measures, a Soviet-coined tactic for disrupting and influencing the politics of its enemies. Okay, so basically, here we go. We got another 6 witnesses. Read the entire article. Those witnesses were never identified. Okay. Number 2, they're basically testifying in front of Congress that Putin himself was involved in this misinformation, and we know of all the articles that tried tying Trump directly with Russia and Putin, and we know immediately after Biden got elected what Putin did. We know that Putin respected Trump, he feared Trump, and that there was no way Putin was gonna invade Ukraine when Trump was president. So why would Putin want Trump to win the 2016 election or the 2020 election? So let's look at history the way it actually unfolded and make a rational decision. Okay, so the report goes on. For the United States to stave off future misinformation campaigns coming from Russia, they recommended building up cyber defense, quickly diffusing false stories and conspiracy stories, and working with social media companies to tackle the problem of fake and auto-generated policies. In other words, the experts, the 6 unidentified experts, claim that we needed to censor the entire internet to save our election integrity. All right. Facebook, meanwhile, has taken down a page called I Love America that featured all kinds of patriotic content after it learned the page was run by Ukrainians. So there we go. Facebook jumped right ahead of everybody, decided to start censoring. We know this is only the tip of the iceberg. We know how Facebook and Musk showed us how Twitter actually worked, created programs, created artificial intelligence to censor the internet. So that was one of their goals in accusing Trump of working with Russia was to gain access and, claim they had the right to censor information on the internet. Well, where'd this all come from? Okay, this is actually an article from CNN dated May 20th, 2022. Hillary Clinton personally approved plan to share Trump-Russia allegation with press in 2016, campaign manager said. What did the campaign manager say? From CNN, Hillary Clinton personally approved her campaign plans in fall 2016 to share information with reporter about an uncollaborated alleged server back channel between Donald Trump and a top Russian bank. Her former campaign manager testified Friday in federal court. So here we go. Where did this all come from? The Trump-Russia connection came from Hillary. So what was Hillary doing? She's trying to combat the fake news sources that, okay, let's admit it, every time Hillary opened up her mouth, it was so easy for these fake news agencies to exaggerate a few points and put up a humorous article about it. We're going to take a look at where this information actually came from. Did Russia have anything to do with it? Anything at all? Okay, this is directly from the U.S. Department of State. And this is January 20th, 2022. Russia's top 5 persistent disinformation narratives. The United States government is spending our tax dollars to convince the American people that Trump was working with Russia to influence the 2016 election. All right, get this. We're paying for this information. Where'd it come from? It came from Hillary. All right. So, our tax dollars going to defend Hillary. All right. So we get a little deeper. A new story says Russian trolls didn't sway the 2016 election. Was the threat overhyped? How much influence did, whatever happened, the fake news and all that stuff, they still call it the Russian trolls. And this is in January 20th, 2023. They took a look at it. And what did the report say? Basically, there is a widespread concern that foreign actors are using social media to interfere with elections worldwide. So what did the report say? We demonstrate first that exposure to Russian disinformation accounts was heavily concentrated by only 1% of users, accounted for 70% of exposures. Second, exposure was concentrated among users who strongly identified as Republicans. Third, exposure to the Russian influence campaign was eclipsed by content from domestic news media and politicians. Well, first of all, when we compare those so-called Russian sites, which for the most part, most of them weren't even Russian, when you compare their content and their hits and everything else compared to the $1 billion a piece Clinton and Trump spent on their campaign, all the commercials, all the other stuff, all the content, the regular news media put out on a campaign and all that stuff, it didn't even amount to a drop in a bucket, not even a drop in the ocean. And they said only 1% of the users, which is, I guess, all the users on the internet, only accounted for 1% of the people using the internet actually visited these sites. So you figure out, okay, what's 1% of 160.1 million voters? Okay, so who was responsible for all this stuff? Like I said, it's impossible to find all this stuff. It's all been censored out and everything. But I did find one area to where you can still find information on it, and it gives us enough information to make an educated decision. How teens in the Balkans are duping Trump supporters with fake news. You notice how they kind of, this is BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed News identified more than 100 pro-Trump websites being run from a single town in the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. Okay, so they try to put out their news and feed the general public with the thought that all the 80 million Trump supporters were influenced by these kids and teens in the Balkans. Okay, let's see if that's true. Okay, fake news. How a partying Macedonian teen earns thousands publishing lies. Fake news ran wild during the presidential election, and even though the contest is over, the gold rush continues for dozens of enterprising teens in a remote Macedonian town. Their main cash flow, President-elect Donald Trump. Nothing can beat Trump supporters when it comes to social media engagement, says 18-year-old Dmitry, who claims to have made $60,000 in the past 6 months for his fake news phenomenon. NBC News takes you inside the small town of Veles, where the teens are spending big on cars, clubbing, and real estate as they cash in on an empire of lies that shook a presidential election. In other words, let's take a look at this. NBC is trying to convince the general public that, a group of 18-year-old kids in the Baltics swayed the entire election. Okay, and we've already looked at Hillary's part in it. She made up this whole story about Trump conspiring with Russia. It had nothing to do with Russia. If they would read your articles, Russia had nothing to do with it. This is kids out of the Baltic, all of Macedonia. So, already we're finding conflicts in their stories. Okay, this is the news of the millennium, said the story on the worldpoliticus.com, citing unnamed FBI sources that claimed Hillary Clinton will be indicted in 2017 for crimes related to her email scandal. Your prayers have been answered, declared the headline. For Trump supporters, that certainly seemed to be the case. They helped the baseless story generate over 140,000 shares, reactions, and comments on Facebook. Now, when you take the number of shares, the number of reactions, and the number of comments, all combined, it only came up to 140,000. So basically, you can divide this in half. It might have had 70,000 views. Maybe even if you say 140,000 views. Anyway, if you look at some statistics, like there was over 800,000 people that viewed Trump's live speech after he was indicted in Florida and flew up and made a speech at that restaurant. And if you look at Tucker Carlson, he went on Twitter, he had 1.4 million people viewing him live. I mean, come on, 140,000? Do the math. Meanwhile, roughly 60,000 miles away in a small town in the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, a young man watched as money began trickling into his Google AdSense account. Okay. They had no problem admitting they were doing this to make money, alright? For example, the most successful post BuzzFeed News found on the Macedonian site is based on a story from a fake news site. The headline on the story from the conservativestate.com was Hillary Clinton in 2013. I would like to see people like Donald Trump run for office. They're honest and can't be bought. The post is a week old and has racked up an astonishing 480,000 shares, reactions, and comments. Now here we go. They get the number 480,000 by combining the three. So how many actual views? It doesn't say. To put that into perspective, the New York Times exclusive story that revealed Donald Trump declared a $960 million loss in his 1995 income tax returns generated a little more than 175,000 Facebook interactions in a month. In other words, they're admitting their left fake news is not attracting any attention. And even this fake news, when you compare it to, I've seen people post comments, editorials on YouTube, and within hours they reach this. This is after a week, 480,000. So, do the math, do the comparison. What kind of influence does this really have? Most of the posts on these sites are exaggerated or completely plagiarized. In other words, they saw the story someplace else and decided to boost it a little bit to make it more comical. From fringe and right-wing sites in the U.S., the Macedonians see a story elsewhere, write a sensationalized headline, and quickly post it to their site. Then they share it on Facebook to try and generate traffic. The more people who click through from Facebook, the more money they earn from ads on their websites. Okay, later in the year, some of the Vellies experimented with left-leaning or pro-Bernie Sanders content, but nothing performed as well on Facebook as Trump content. In other words, these kids were experimenting. They're enterprising. They're trying different things. What they do is just, come up with a fake website, copy a story, put on a headline to attract attention. Boom. Are they really lying, or did they just copy and paste the stories, or what? They really don't get into, the true facts about what happened. But for the most part, conservatives, patriots, they looked at this stuff as comic relief with all the crap that's been going on, especially with Biden for the last 2.5 years. We need something to alleviate the pain. So today we got thousands and thousands of memes generated a day that take the true facts, exaggerate a little bit, and make a joke out of it. Come on, it's a joke. So let's put it into perspective. Okay, the young Macedonians who ran these sites say they didn't care about Donald Trump. They were responding to a straightforward economic incentive. As Facebook regularly reveals in earning reports, a Facebook user is worth about 4 times a user outside the United States. In other words, their Facebook ads are paying 1/4 to these people outside the United States as they are to people that want to enter into ad campaigns on Facebook in the U.S. The fraction of a penny per click of U.S. displayed advertising, a declining market for American publishers, goes a long way in Vellies. Several teens and young men who ran these sites told BuzzFeed News that they learned the best way to generate traffic is to get their politics stories to spread on Facebook. And the best way to generate shares on Facebook is to publish sensationalist and often false content that caters to Trump supporters. Now, why did they cater to Trump supporters? Okay, let's take a look at if they cater to the left. The left is only going to read an article they agree with 100%. If there's one thing they don't agree with on that article, there is no chance they're going to share it. Okay. Now, if they cater to conservatives, to the far right, the patriots, the Trump supporters, they don't have to have everything 100% in agreement with those viewers. If those viewers find it's a little comical, there's a chance they might share it. If they find it really comical, there's at least a 50-50 chance they're going to share it. So, you can't cater to the left unless you agree with them 100%, and the left has no sense of humor. These kids are writing basic jokes. That's what they're doing. They're comedians. They can't cater to the left. It doesn't work. But if they cater to the conservatives that are looking for a little bit of comic relief to deal with the situations we got to deal with today, they got a gold mine. Simple. Okay, Dimitri says he earned at least $60,000 in the past 6 months, far outstripping his parents' income and transforming his prospects in a town where the average annual wage is $4,800. It doesn't say if that's in 6 months or annually. He is one of the more successful fake news publishers in the area. The main source of cash, supporters of America's president-elect. Nothing can beat Trump supporters when it comes to social media engagement, he says. So that's why we stick with Trump. Well, okay, another good reason why you can't cater to the left. If you're trying to be enterprising and successful, the left is just going to call you a capitalist. Simple. I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen. If you're young and trying to be enterprising, you're going to get your support from the right. Even if you get things wrong, as long as you're trying to be creative and enterprising, and especially if it supports Trump, the conservatives are going to support you. As simple as that. It's just the way it is. Okay, the researchers found ads for the big name brands like Amazon, Office Max, and Sprint on clickbait and misinforming sites like Addicting Info, RT, and Twitchy, and Google led the pack in supporting them. According to the GDI study, Google served about 70% of the websites sampled. It also provided about 37%, or $86 million annually of their revenue. The next few companies didn't even come close to their support for misinforming sources. Okay, so you got $86 million divided up into all of this misinformation sites. Hey, there's hundreds of them, so realistically, that one town had 100 sites. You're talking 1,000 sites. Basically, when it boils right down to it, the average fake news site probably makes less than $100,000 a year compared to the millions that the fake media news sites are making. And when we look at it, it's kind of a real issue. Something we got to look at is these kids, 18-year-olds, came up with a concept, fake news. They made a little bit of money, not huge, gigantic sums, $86 million annually, divided by thousands of sites. It's not really something you're going to retire from. But the fake media saw, there's money to be made. And the fake media has these people, executives that they're paying that are supposed to broaden and guarantee their income sources. Well, the left media couldn't come up with an idea to save their lives, right? But they copied the concepts from these 18-year-olds and thought they could make it work better. Did they make it work better? No, you take a look at what's been happening with the left media. They've been losing money left and right, firing people, hiring more radical people, losing more money. I mean, realistically, the left cannot come up with an original concept of your own, and they can't even copy an idea that an 18-year-old in the Balkans can make successful, at least support his family with. So that's what this all boils down to. Okay, so research conducted in Oxford shows, Oxford, basically a big university, big name, run by Soros and Klaus and the WEF. So here you got the greatest, supposedly the greatest minds in the world are coming up with this study and approving this study. So what does it show us? Well, it shows that junk news published on Facebook in May before the European elections got more shares, likes, and comments than news from established media. In other words, these fake websites that are doing absolutely nothing, they're only making at tops $100,000 a site, are doing better than the major media newsworks in the United States and Europe combined. The researcher points out that the reason junk media performed well because it is not bound by ethics, logic, or truth. Okay, so this is the best. The 1,500 or so greatest minds in the world could come up with backing and funding and a report and research out of Oxford University. Now you can see what are failing. But here we go, just to recap. The whole Russian thing was Hillary Clinton's idea. It never existed. There's absolutely, it's almost impossible to find information about the fake new websites in the 2016 election. That's all been censored out, so it's almost impossible for us to research. And the examples we found is they identified sites in Ukraine and the Balkans, but I know some Russian websites that exist, but those were basically, I get the concept that those were people working at their kitchen table on a laptop, making money in their underwear. So basically, we got to take a look at this. But the main point is the left media is losing money, they're losing following, and for the most part, hey, conservatives, patriots, we all look at this stuff on the fake news. We know it's fake news right off the bat, and we get a little laugh out of it. Big deal. What's everybody up in arms about it? But CNN, NBC, BBC are all trying to convince the general public that Trump supporters are being brainwashed by this fake news. We know it's a joke. I mean, get serious. Anyway, if you like it, share, comment, leave I just said, leave a comment. Anyway, subscribe. I'm going to keep up with some stories that other people just are not covering. Anyway, have a great day. Thanks for your support. And hope you find the internet useful, informative, as well as entertaining. I mean, that's what it boils down to.